before last year, I was always saying I can't hire an executive assistant or virtual assistant because I don't understand the process that the assistant needs to go through. If I don't know the process, how can I hire a VA and have them do the task? And then a switch flipped. And I realized the really smart and successful people delegate outcomes. They don't delegate processes. They're saying, this is what needs to happen. This is the outcome I need. But they don't define the process. That really freed up my cognitive reserves. I hired an executive assistant on January 2nd. And, at the time of this recording, I've gotten about 350 hours of time back, things that this person worked on that was on my to-do list for 2 years.
Welcome back to The Junto with Scott Radigan. I'm your host, the founder of Functional Alert, and this show, The Junto. The Junto comes from Ben Franklin's club of the same name, where we gathered experts and peers from different trades to support each other through their entrepreneurial journey, and that's what we're doing here. We have experts from around the field, both inside and outside of functional medicine, and those that can help us in our entrepreneurial journey as well. So everything from mindset to practical tips and tools and software that you might be able to use, anything that we can do to support each other and optimize our own selves so that you can turn around and then optimize the lives of your patients. So that's what we're all here to do. And let's jump right into this week's episode of The Junto. Uli Iserloh is one of the leading marketing minds in the integrative and functional medicine space these days. He advises many of today's leaders on strategy and tech implementation. Uli's patient attraction strategies are responsible for millions of dollars in revenue and have generated tens of thousands of patient leads, including multi-million-dollar online summits. After 10 years in the pharmaceutical industry, he founded Big Boost Marketing, an award-winning digital marketing agency providing strategy, implementation, and ad management for health and wellness professionals. Welcome, Uli.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, and super excited to just talk about how to work smarter and not harder, how to save time, and really share with your audience the things that you and I have discovered in just being way more effective in our day-to-day operations.
Yeah, and that's huge right now, as you know well, and I do too as an entrepreneur. But really, the clients we serve, these physicians and providers who are usually solo, unless they're fortunate enough to have a spouse or a partner, whether that's a romantic partner or just a business partner to help them, most don't. So I'm excited to chat with you because I know you have great insights, and some of it goes over my head, so we have to talk dumb to me a little bit. And so I'm excited to jump into it with you. But first, I think you kind of downplay it, but you have like a great background in like science and pharmaceuticals. And tell us more about that. How did that work? And I think, don't you have a PhD?
Yeah. Actually, I grew up in Germany and then came over to the US for a PhD in organic chemistry at the University of Pittsburgh. And then obviously you go through postdoc. And I worked for 10 years in the big pharma industry in Alzheimer's research specifically. And I very vividly remember 2004, there's this guy called Bredesen that said, hey, lifestyle intervention can help you with cognitive decline. And, all my peers saying, we're going to be way smarter. And then fast forward a couple $100 billion and, 10, 15 years. And the big pharma said, all right, we give up. We can't figure it out. And so along the way, I always joke that, I worked for the empire and then I joined the rebellion, and now I'm on the good guy side working in integrative and functional medicine and help practitioners in that realm get their voice out and, help patients, especially with chronic complex conditions. And I feel personally right now, there's like an amazing confluence that 2 years before AI came on the scene, it was very hard to create content to stand out and be the counterweight to mass media, conventional media, etc. But now with AI, with ChatGPT, you can now publish, process video, etc. You can now really amp up your content game. And I feel there's a much more even playing field than there was just 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I want to dig into that, especially how can you stand out when everybody's using the same tools effectively? So let's just jump right there. How can someone stand out in their marketing when ChatGPT is available to most, and there's plenty of automating that's happening?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, just give a couple examples how AI and AI tools have democratized at least of the content generation. You know, I remember 2 years ago, I hired a Canadian company to create 90 TikTok reels for me, and I was like $6,000 or something. So you can do the math of like, how much is this per video? It's like, okay, $60 a video. It's like now the same job of what they did in terms of post-production, probably $200 total for 90 videos, you know? So before it's like, wow, you have to have real cash, put it behind front this and then hope that it works. Now, essentially you can probably shoot this on your own. The technology is there. Again, you have teleprompters. You can remove the background. You can fix the eye tracking that you could read from a teleprompter and nobody would be able to tell. And then you take the video and you take it into now softwares that auto process your video with all the bells, put the caption in there. Again, that was done manually just 18 months ago. And now there's a software, $20 a month, that does this for you. So just one example that makes it a lot easier. There's innovation in other areas too. If we're thinking about soap notes, tools like Freed AI or Practice Better has this now in their tool that you have an AI person listening to your Zoom webinars, creating notes in the right format, and then you just copy paste it and stick it into your EMR. Again, we talked about ChatGPT, creating scripts, etc. So there's many examples where things get a lot easier. And as a health practitioner, you may be apprehensive. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Listen, the genie is out of the bottle and it's not going to go back. And you can't do this manually. You got to use these tools for your first draft, and then you put your own spin on it. But to answer your question, I think what underpins all of this is having the right strategy in place in the first place. Who am I talking to? What's the problem I solve for them? And how is my practice different from other people? And I like this book by Sally Hogshead. It's You, How the World Sees You. And again, what she says is, she's quoted, the famous quote is, different is better than better. So it's not about us saying we're better than another integrative or functional medicine practitioner or competitor. You just have to say, I'm different. And there's a certain subset of the audience that we're talking to that has gone the traditional routes. You probably know what they've done, and you just have to say the opposite. Hey, you don't have to do all this stuff here. We're doing it this way and it works way better, and you have to explain why it's way better. So I think a lot of practitioners don't really think this all the way through. They're saying, I'm going to help everyone. I'm just going to be a bland functional medicine practitioner. And I just use this as an example. Could be integrative, naturopathic, could be outside the health industry as well. But, you can't be bland. You got to stand for something. You got to be unique, because why on earth would a prospective client choose you if you said the same thing that everyone else?
No, that's awesome. And we'll put a link to that book too in the show notes for sure. I wrote that down and I want to buy it myself. But I like how you say to put like your own spin on it and kind of be unique, because and I loved your answer to my earlier question about how can one stand out with AI. And I was thinking of it in a completely different way, meaning just make AI create a blog for you, and then you kind of just lightly touch it up, and that's your blog, where everybody else has similar blogs created by the same software. Where you were doing it is to kind of help your workflows and systems be much more efficient using the tech. And to kind of piggyback off your last answer, being unique, I think there is a place there to not be generic. And I've told people, just tell stories, because AI can't create your personal experience or an experience that you had with a different patient. Don't use their names, of course, but you could say, I had this patient who was suffering from X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And all we had to do was elimination diet or change their soap or whatever it ended up being. Like a lot of times, easy, quick fixes that can help your marketing message.
Yeah,
adding
and
personal stories too.
And again, I'm not saying that we don't use ChatGPT to write blog posts, emails, videos, scripts, repurposing it. We do each and every day. My wife, I'm always joking, she's in love with another man. His name is Chad GPT. And she's like coming into my office like, I love Chad. He's amazing. And the key to making this work is really setting up an AI persona. So when you're using ChatGPT, the key is that you set up one chat. You're not starting a new chat each and every time if you have a new blog post, but you set up one chat instance, and that is now your marketing and copywriting persona for your practice. So that person is trained, just like you would train a front desk person saying, this is my practice, this is my audience, this is what makes us different, this is the type of problems people have, this is what keeps them up at night. And when you train ChatGPT on all the background, what makes you unique, if you're then saying, write a blog post in the style of XYZ, like write a blog post in the style of Mark Hyman about why XYZ does it, incorporating the following talking points. Now it will take all of the style of Mark Hyman, which ChatGPT knows, and write a blog post in Mark Hyman's style, but it uses content, analogies, and the avatar that's unique to your practice. And so then that's what you can do. You can say, hey, write a blog post in the style of Marie Forleo if you like how Marie Forleo talks, or hey, write a blog post or an email in the style of Chris Carr. You look at your favorite writers, social media people, and saying, I like how this person writes. And personally, in integrative and functional medicine healthcare, I think women writers are much more empathetic, and you probably get a better style rather than saying, write this style in the style of an internet marketing bro. It will probably have the wrong energy for your audience. So just pick a female writer and then train ChatGPT, and the output that you get, it will blow your mind. And then obviously you tweak certain things in post-production, but 95% is done. And by all measures, that blog post is powerful. People look at it, it's like, wow, this doesn't feel like it was written by AI, because it has your practice. It has a very specific style. There's enough color in there, and then obviously you tweaked it. And again, in the past, it would take me an hour to write an email. Now I write the email in 7-8 minutes. And that is really the reason where we get our time back, which is really important as an entrepreneur. We don't have endless time. We all have the same amount of time. So you have to really figure out, what can I get rid of? What can I delegate? And what can I use technology, such as AI tools, to get my time back?
That's awesome. And I know when we were setting up today's show, you had some tips that you wanted to share, because I was asking you kind of on the side, like, hey, I'm setting up with an executive assistant. Any ideas for me? How do I get them up onboarded quickly and efficiently? And you were like, yeah, I've got lots of ideas. So tell me, you know, what you said, how to buy back your time.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things that I want to share, a couple of resources, but I think the first and most important distinction is something that happened last year. And before last year, I was always saying, I can't hire an executive assistant or virtual assistant because I don't understand the process that the assistant needs to go through. If I don't know the process, how can I hire a VA and have them do the task? And then a switch flipped. And I realized the really smart and successful people delegate outcomes. They don't delegate processes. They're saying, this is what needs to happen. This is the outcome I need. But they don't define the process. And they're saying, here, executive assistant, you're smart enough, you're resourceful enough, you can figure out the how. I don't need to know the how. I just need to know the what. What do I want you to do? And so that really freed up my cognitive reserves. I hired an executive assistant on January 2nd. And, at the time of this recording, I've gotten about 350 hours of time back, things that this person worked on that was on my to-do list for 2 years. And it's like, now I finally get to work through the backlog of building all the things. And we're going to talk about, what exactly my executive assistant is doing. But the key thing that stops so many people moving forward is they want to delegate processes instead of delegating outcomes. And you just have to unchain yourself. The person you hired is smart enough to figure it out. So it's like, this is what needs to happen. It will free up your mind. Essentially, you're just saying, this is what I need. And the other 98% of how to do it, you don't even have to think about anymore.
That is really, like you call it, a switch flip. Because as you were talking, I was like, oh man, that is just brilliant. And And I don't know why we don't do that in more often. So just
I
with
have a
this podcast,
hypothesis here.
go ahead.
I think, especially in integrative and functional medicine, we are detectives. We can figure stuff out. We're smart. But just because you're smart doesn't mean that you need to figure out the process, how to do X, Y, Z, the nitty gritty, the figuring out all this stuff. And so, first resource I have here is a book by Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time. And there's a lot of books about time management, and it almost feels like move this time from here to there. But his book is very different. It's very practical. So don't buy it as an audiobook. Even if you like listening to audiobooks, there's a lot of stuff in there that you want to look at. There's frameworks, diagrams. So the paper copy is better. And his point is, it's not about you figuring out how to just be more efficient with the hours you have. We need to get rid of stuff off your plate, move it into technology, automation, and an executive assistant. And you just need to get rid of this stuff because all the things that keep you from being the CEO will cost you way more money than paying for that executive assistant. Let me say that again. It's like anything that takes you out of your realm as a CEO, when you're doing admin stuff, mundane things that somebody at $10, $15 an hour could handle, you don't have that time for CEO tasks. You're not having time to serve patients, not time to make money, think about your marketing, do strategic partnership. You just don't have the time. And this used to be me. I'm speaking from personal experience that somebody that had a team of 20 team members since 2014, managing everyone has virtual assistants except this guy, the most important guy that needs to set strategy, that is probably responsible for sales. And by me taking me out of this sales and marketing and promotion role, and me doing essentially mundane admin stuff, sending out emails, figuring appointments, scheduling, etc., it's like I was costing my company millions of dollars over the years. So don't be, penny wise, pound foolish, saying, hey, I can't hire a VA, too expensive. It's like, what would it do if you had 20 extra hours a week? You had full cognitive reserves, you would be inspired, you could be actually productive, you didn't feel frazzled, burned out, etc. And so this is why this book is so important. It tells you, how do I recognize the value of my time? What's your hourly rate? If you're going to get paid $200,000 a year, your effective hourly rate based on 2,000 work hours in a year is X. And so if X is $400, you can say anything that somebody else can do for $100 an hour, a quarter of your hourly rate. Why would you do this? It's like make $400 and give the person $100. If you want to make $80 an hour, anything that's less than $20, you should give to somebody else, because your best use of time is make more money, serve more patients, create more partnership, being the CEO of your company. And unfortunately, the CEO usually comes last. And again, personal experience, it's like everyone else gets my time except the person that needs to more, the company, to make bank, to pay the team, to create stability, to have resources and resilience.
That's great that you admitted that, and which is cool because I really like how people tend to grow in their kind of entrepreneurial journey, and being somebody that helps people get started a lot of times, or kind of just rethink how they approach going from like side hustle to like, this is now I'm the CEO of my medical practice. It's something that I wrestle with all the time not wrestle, but speak to physicians about all the time. And that's the stuff that kind of lights me up. So thanks for sharing your own journey there. So when people, and I've gone through similar for sure, as I'm just now 7 years in hiring an assistant after having tried it a couple of times, but not really being able to let go, right? So how can somebody, one, delegate outcomes, not processes, but then control the quality of that?
Yeah.
How have you handled that?
So maybe you should just, for the record, define what's an executive assistant versus a virtual assistant.
Perfect.
And the idea is really both are virtual. They don't have to be in the same country. I oftentimes find that if you don't have to hire them necessarily local, if you try to find a local executive admin, it's like finding a unicorn. You want them to work on your EMR. You want them to know your marketing system. You want them to do copywriting. You want to do this. And you want them to be local, and you want them to be affordable. It's like you're looking for a unicorn. You will never find this person locally. And oftentimes these people are in very high demand and they constantly move around. So that's where the concept of a virtual admin is coming into play. Now, the difference between virtual assistant is virtual assistant just has a generic set of skills. The executive assistant is, as the name says, helping executives with all the executive tasks. So that could be managing your emails. And again, Dan Martell said, that's probably the first thing that you want to look at. How can I automate things that incoming email gets filtered into different folders so you don't even see it? How can the VA or executive assistant manage the emails on their own? And obviously over time, they'll learn more and more how to do it. And then how do they route the emails that only you can answer into a folder so that you're only looking at this? So for me, I used to have 500 emails in my inbox any day and I need to scan it. And now I see 3 to 4 emails in my inbox. And from a cognitive perspective, it's like now it's like you don't get stressed out. It's like I don't worry about all the other folders, etc. Everything is organized, so that's great. Now, executive assessments, again, somebody that has worked for a CEO, they're there to make your life easier. So they can handle things like email management, calendar bookings. Now, in my case, I use a lot of online calendars, so that's mostly handled by technology, which is probably smarter. But I have clients in Singapore, in Australia, and for them, I need custom bookings. And so my assistant handles those bookings and books them in and figures this out manually. Then, maybe you have a lot of traveling. You're an active speaker. You're traveling with your family. Executive assistant can book your travel, hotels, do the research, do all the stuff. Doesn't mean that they have to book it, but you're saying, hey, find me the right hotel based on these criteria, find me a flight, give me all this, put it into a Google Doc. And then you just look at the results saying, yep. And then either you book it or they book it. But that is, again, leveraging your time. And so you ask, how do you make sure that you can let go? Well, Dan Martell has this 10-80-10 rule. So the first 10% of any project, any outcome that you delegate is you and the executive assistant talking about what is the outcome. It's like, I want X. What is X? And how does the executive know when X is done? So definition of done. What constitutes in my book that the task is complete? And I often tell them, it's like, this is a 1-hour job. Don't turn this into a 4-hour job. It's 1 hour time. This is what I want. So I put boundaries around it, that it's not an open-ended thing. And then they come back to me, hey, I spent 25 hours researching this topic. I'm like, that was a 1-hour task. So I give them these kind of boundaries. So first 10% is, what is the outcome I want? What are some of the parameters? What are some of the guidelines? What are some of the talking points? So I give them some granularity. They ask me feedback. It's like, hey, I don't understand this. Do you mean this or that? So I want to make sure that the executive assistant is crystal clear on what I want, the outcome. And sometimes I saying, hey, we already have an SOP or process for this, talk to this person, or hey, we did this previously last year for that person, look up their file. So if there's a process in place, I point them in the right direction. But 90% of the time is like, I don't know the process. We've never done this before. You figure it out. Then 80% of the project is the executive assistant doing the task and reporting on it. And the last 10% is me reviewing it. So if we're applying this to writing social media posts, I'm the one that says, okay, I write my own emails. Once Uli has written the email, the executive assistant takes this and turns it into a blog, takes it into ChatGPT, chunks it up and creates social media posts around it, chunks it up and creates a carousel post, goes into Canva and creates graphics using my templates. And then that's the 80%. The last 10%, Uli, here's the blog post URL, here's the Canva slides, here is the copy for social media. And then I review it. So the last 10% is my quality control. I'm changing words. I'm saying, no, you can't say it this way, that way. Hey, here was a typo. So it's not like I just give it to somebody and then I don't pay attention to the outcome. The last 10% is quality control. And so this helps you let go because you're not really letting go fully of control. You're still the last person to say yes or no. And obviously part of that review is giving generalized feedbacks like, hey, I liked how you do this, but next time and going forward, let's always do it like this way. And so you realize when they don't do it exactly like you want, it's just because in the first 10% you didn't define these specifics, which you didn't know. So then obviously the last 10% is always a feedback loop that next time we do a similar task, I remember and they remember, and then the outcome is even better and I have even less to do. So when it comes to social media, blog posts, graphics, the more you work with an executive assistant, the more they already anticipate, oh, Uli is going to say this, I'm going to fix this. And out of the gate, it's like, yep, looks good, looks good, looks good, looks good. So that last 10% can be very easy. And again, for everyone listening, I'm not the one scheduling it, right? I'm just approving the raw Canva deck, the Google thing. And then I say to the executive assistant, okay, go in my social media scheduler and then schedule it. Hey, create this video reel and post it on Instagram. So they will then handle the scheduling and I get to see it on my feed. It's like, oh, cool. That just happened. But I really minimized my involvement to just setting the expectation, the outcome, and then last 10% reviewing the outcome to make sure whatever goes out is on brand, on point, on message, so that there's never a situation where it's like, some intern wrote something and it's totally off brand.
I love it. This is so practical and helpful. And I think what you were saying about the first 10%, I think a lot of times people fail with assistants, myself included, is when they don't give crystal clear parameters, talking points, outcomes. And they're just like, hey, go do this task. And it's not the assistant's fault that you're not very good at telling them what to do or teaching them how you would like it to be done. So that's a huge one is one, becoming a better leader, becoming a better delegating boss, and then still having that quality control at the end. I love it.
Yeah. There's just, we can talk more about some of the ideas what an executive assistant can actually do, because when I waded into this, it's like, wow, I didn't even realize somebody could do this. And just knowing of what's possible makes it even more compelling to hire somebody. But it's like, wow, I wouldn't have to do this. So we talked about email inbox management. We talked about managing calendar and appointments, handling travel and logistics. Next part could be admin tasks. So administrative support for client interaction. So for instance, my EA sits in most meetings, takes notes, writes the recap email with the recording, so I don't have to deal with it. I just look at the recap email and tweak it. It could be organizing your digital files. So for instance, my Canva folder was an absolute mess. It's like, okay, you have 3 or 4 years of unfiltered work, organize it into folder, make it logical. Same with my Google Drive. I was like, couldn't find anything. It's like, okay, somebody's role is it, clean this up so I can find stuff and make this logical. Then research, obviously saying, hey, ChatGPT, find me all the podcast hosts that I could go on there. Make me a list with the topics and the show numbers, etc. Get this. It's like, okay, now can you write an email campaign to get me on different podcasts? Or if you have your own podcast, have the person find out who are guests that you should be inviting. Again, look at the following 15 podcasts, look at their guest list, see which guests actually make sense for my show, and then send them this email to get them onboarded and handle the logistics, handle everything related to my podcast. And all I have to do is, here's a calendar appointment on my thing. You're recording a podcast with Uli today. So it's that easy that you don't even have to think about everything came before. And so delegating tasks like this is not just like one task, but it's saying, okay, first task, find me podcast hosts that are having the guests that I want. So They research this. They come back with a list. You saying, okay, here's the 20 that I want. Don't use these 4 people. It's like, okay, next step, look at the guest list. Give me the guests from all the 18 podcasts. Give me a list of 250 potential people with an email, etc. Okay, now I'm going through that list. Again, last 10%. Next task, okay, reach out to these 15 first and make this pitch. So you go through this step by step, but you always do 10, 80, 10. It's like, okay, what's the first 10%? Okay, first we need this one. Let them do the work. You review it. Then next part, 10, 80, 10, and so forth. And soon you have the whole process automated that executive assistant knows how to do it. So I do a lot of research looking at what competitors are doing, marketing messages, webinars outside the industry to give me ideas because I don't have time to surf the internet the whole day. So I just get summaries and then I review it and then I plot my next step. Data entry and metrics. Maybe you want to know what your open rates of your emails are and which subject lines work better. Sign this. You could say, hey, analyze my top 15 competitors and tell me which of their social media posts got the most traction in the last 6 months. Make me a list of similar topics that apply to my audience. Again, research part, do it manually, do it with ChatGPT. That tells me, okay, Uli, you got to talk about this stuff. This is popular in your industry. We talked about creatives, Canva graphics, updating those things, email marketing, setting up emails, scheduling emails, social media management, making sure that all your content is there. Again, repurposing podcasts that you did as a video and chunk it down into 30-second snippets and post this on TikTok, YouTube, etc. And then obviously use a software that you just feed it in. It just chunks it up on its own. Their software's out like this, that, you press a button, you upload the main video and you get 25 different videos there. You just download the clips you want and they post it, right? So there's a lot of stuff. You just set it up once, the process, they do it, and then, it's on autopilot. They could update your website. They could, we talked about podcast PR. Some people use it for affiliate management. It's like, hey, find out people.
Now, are we talking ChatGPT for a lot of this, or the EA, or both?
That's the executive assistant that's powered with ChatGPT. So a lot of it is that, and that's maybe the main difference between virtual assistant and executive assistants, that prior to the advent of AI, there was always this language barrier. They can't write stuff for you. But if they know ChatGPT, they can enter the prompts. They can copy this stuff from ChatGPT, and their first version is pretty much on point. And so that's really, I've had so many virtual assistants that I hired over the years, and my experience was similar to you. They didn't work out. They didn't have the right skill set, etc. It's so frustrating. And so when you switch to an AI-trained executive assistant that knows your CRM, that knows Canva, that knows email marketing, they can handle a lot of the things because now they're like a Swiss Army knife. Powered by ChatGPT, they're super efficient. Their output is great, and that's how they really contribute to, removing some of the cognitive overhead that's burdening you.
So every time you talk, I am floored by learning something new, and one, and two, like how passionate you are about all of this stuff. So I'm sitting here writing down your precious quotes so I can kind of like clip those manually. And so I should be using the AI features in the software here as well. But, sometimes I've got to go adjust the slider. But you've been in this game for a long time, in the functional medicine marketing game. And I know we go back a little while. You're big on systems. So kind of, you've touched on a lot of it, but as far as ChatGPT is one tool that you use, what are some of the, and before we move away from EAs, let's start there. How do you find one? Because that's probably question number one on everybody's mind right now.
And I'll be honest, I've had made recommendations in the past, and two takeaways from the prior 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, you should probably always go through a staffing agency, because you going on Upwork or wherever, and finding a random person and, the likelihood that person is actually working out, there's a lot of vetting and work involved. So I usually go with agency. So then I had an agency that I usually went for, and it just didn't work out for a variety of reasons. That, the virtual assistant didn't have the skill set that I needed. So I shelved it. But more recently, I came across an agency in the Philippines. And, again, I'm happy to make introductions for anybody that needs an introduction. But they have essentially a cohort of like hundreds of executive assistants. So they have executive assistants and not just virtual assistants. They're trained on AI. So the common tools like ChatGPT, Claude, some imaging processing. A lot of them know Canva. A lot of them know the CRM of your choice. So it's now easy saying, listen, I need somebody that is on Go High Level, trained, that knows Canva, that has this, and here's the task I want them. And so then they're saying, oh, we just have exactly the person that you want. And again, we alluded to this in the beginning. It's not just the technology that they need to know. It's really more the attitude. So I always saying must be supremely resourceful. It's like, do not ask me for any questions. It's like, go to ChatGPT, go to Google, ask our team, ask your team in that staffing agency. You have like hundreds of people at your fingertips. The answer is out there. You figure out the answer. So outcomes it is. I'm not telling you how to do it. And then obviously the other sort of psychological trait is like, are you extrovert or introvert? So again, when we're talking with, Filipino executive assistant, they're usually very shy. They're extremely loyal, but you need to find somebody that speaks their mind. You don't want to have sort of the quiet person that never says anything and just nods. I want somebody that's questioning me, that is asking for clarification. I don't want them to assume anything. I want them to ask me the question you need to ask to actually be confident that you can do it. And so you want a seasoned executive assistant, but it's very possible. And these people can then make an impact from day one. They come in, they know this is what I do. And, where's your system? Get the logins, get them onboarded. And then there's not a lot of training. Now, you should still train them. So every person that we hire, it's like they meet with our team. What's our philosophy? What's our values? What's our products? What's our processes? What's our avatar? So they spend probably a good week, 20, 40 hours just learning about our business so that they understand when they're doing things, who are we talking to, who is who are the big name influencers, who are the people that you definitely need to send to Uli right away versus you can handle. So we invest a lot of training into that. And then I take a very meticulous approach providing feedback. So again, when you work with Filipino VAs or assistants, they're very sensitive to how you give feedback. And so I found over the last 10 years, and my dear friend Carla Singson, she was the one that actually initially told me, is like the way you phrase constructive feedback is not the American way, not the German way for sure, not even the Canadian way. You got to do it this way. It's like, hey, thank you so much for XYZ. Great job. So positive praise, that's where we start. Could we try it a different way, doing it this way? So it's just another possibility. It's not a put down. It's like, hey, this was crap. Do it my way. It's like, hey, could we just entertain the thought of trying it this way? Would you mind? And then they do it. And it's like, oh, I like this so much better. Can we use this going forward this way? So that's the ethical way to provide feedback without crushing anybody's ego.
I mean, that's huge, just being aware of cultural differences.
Yeah.
And even though I know most Filipinos are native and fluent in English, the cultural difference, even to Europe and Canada and maybe even
the way Germans would say, it's like,
US.
oh, you're such an idiot, do it this way. It's like, oh, it's constructive criticism, but it doesn't work in America, doesn't work in Canada, definitely doesn't work in the Philippines.
And I just, on a side note, when I email my wife, Linda, or her office manager, Don, I've been informed that I need to add a little more fluff to some of my emails, because I'll just be very direct. Like, this is just one email I can get off my plate. No, then send. So I was like, hey, hope you're having a great day. The answer is no. Have a good one. See ya.
Yeah.
Not that crazy, but I always have to go back and double check my emails now, so I'm not coming across as Matt or Kurt
Yep.
or anything like that. So perfect. So I know you like the agency. I happen to find a really great one on Upwork, though. It is kind of a needle in a haystack situation. So agencies are a great idea to get a little bit more vetted and train people. And I want to touch on, you have a free training on how to get systems in place, which may even free up your time such that you have time to train an EA or a VA. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So we'll put the URL in the show notes, but this is about really the must-have systems any practice needs to have in place. And I call it sort of a tech smart, low overhead, low overwhelm practice. And so we all want this probably. And again, it's not just for health and wellness industries, it really applies to anything, but you want to work smarter, not harder. And so that really starts with tech and automation. So you don't even need a virtual assistant. And then obviously make sure you have these processes in place. There's a lot of things that are now available that, again, just like in AI, there's systems out there now that could cut your marketing tech by 90% every month. So when we figured this out about 2 years ago, we went from $1,500 a month to $200 a month with way more capabilities. And I feel it's criminal to not tell people about it, that, you can really consolidate things. And so, yes, there's definitely monthly savings, but I think the biggest savings is cognitive, reserves that, if you only are in one software, you're essentially, it's like the opposite of multitasking. Rather than going into 8 different softwares, I need to check my social media on these 5 profiles. I need to post stuff on these 5 profiles. It's like the definition of multitasking. And so if you can do it from one tool, it's just way more effective. You don't have to think as much. Everything is neat and tidy in one place. And again, ultimately, when you have 6 to 8 softwares, something is always broken. Something is always not talking to each other. So you almost need a full-time tech person to actually keep your tech running. And so technology has really advanced that you have now an all-in-one HIPAA-compliant system that can do your social media, your online courses, your marketing, your SMS marketing, your calendar bookings. Again, things like Google listings, Google reviews. There's, all the things that any business needs, but especially if you're a solopreneur, it is really so important to have these systems in place. And so in this training, I go over the various systems that you need to have in place, how you can build it yourself, what softwares you need, and how you can save money and time and hassles and headaches.
Yeah, I think you showed it to me about 3 years ago, if we're thinking about the same thing, and I was kind of blown away at some of the capabilities that you're talking about. So definitely go check that out. We'll put the link here in wherever this podcast and show is located, YouTube, our site, and definitely go ahead and follow Uli Iserloh. His website is bigboost.marketing. That's the whole website. It's not no.com. This is really cool. bigboost.marketing. Uli, what else do you want us to know before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think to go back to something I said at the beginning, you need to free up your time to be the CEO of your business. Nobody else is going to do that job for you. That's a job you can't delegate or outsource. And the fate of your business depends on it. And ultimately, we're not doing it for the money. We're doing it for the impact, helping patients heal, helping more patients find you. And so if you're stuck in the mundane and you don't have time for the meaningful, that's a very poor use of your time. And ultimately, you'll feel in your own business that you're struggling. The symptoms are typically burnout, not making enough money, not having money to invest, not having money to pay the team, always being sort of like one, bad month away from bankruptcy, not being able to pay off student loans. And so when you really embrace the shift, I got to be the CEO of my practice, of my business. The only way this happens is if you free up time and really delegate, use automation. And I hope you take me up on that training to see what are the must-have system that you should have in place. It's really mind-blowing what's possible at very minimal monthly cost. And I encourage everyone to at least get the information so that you know what's possible, how to streamline and simplify your business.
Awesome. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. Thanks for being here, Uli. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Junto. If you want to hear more or find all the notes and links that we talked about in today's show, go to functionallawyer.com/junto. And if you got any value out of today, please feel free to share it with a friend, hit that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us out. And give us a subscribe on podcast player of your choice and YouTube. And we'll see you next time in The Junto.